school who teaches marketing and social marketing and consumer behavior, Punam Keller, who is also a member of our board of directors. So Punam, thank you and welcome, and we all look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. I want to tell you up front that my intent was to get out of this silly suit and wear jeans and a t-shirt because it's a workshop, right? So I couldn't do that. So you're going to have to help me out by, despite my attire, by considering this a very interactive workshop. Because that's what a workshop is supposed to be. And just so you know, this is my third deck. And if someone says something to me and says, I'm interested in this, and I just create another deck. And then, this happened twice yesterday, so I create a couple more decks. And what I like to do is just present a couple of things that have come up pretty frequently in the last couple of years since I've been working with PSI. And then it's going to be free for all. You come up with an issue or a challenge, and we'll all co-produce to come up with a solution. And then on to the next one. Fair enough? And I'll do one of these, oh God, I forgot what it's called. Where you have all your slides up, and what is that?
Outline view.
Yeah, but you know how like when you put it, you can just see the story for it. What was that? Resi? Or why don't I have any idea? But you know what I mean, right? We're going to talk about titles to begin with and labels, and they're a big pain in the butt, right? Just where you have all your slides in little, and I'm just going to leave it like that, and you come up with something, and if I have a slide/data to support it, I'll click on it, and if I don't, we can have a conversation. Yeah, sounds good? The most important thing to me is I have 2 words for everything I do. Be open and co-produce. Good? Okay.
That's 3 words.
So we're going to start off with one of the biggest challenges that Peter has, and that is, Peter wants to know, Meredith's going to help me, right? Because I have no makeup. Oh, and now it won't go down. I like this. So we won't show the piece. I really do need a clicker. So part of this. No, it doesn't work. No. Yeah, we'll do this. So part of, now it's just going. So ignore all this. This was because Meredith was going to post this on some website. And, all right, and then I got worried, and they said they're not going to know who you are, which in general comes as good. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so here's the question for you. What is social marketing? And Peter says, I'm going to read it for you again. I have to stand and wave my arms. Peter says, what is this thing called social marketing? And we have a couple more seats here. If you feel like it, it would be great. If you don't, it's okay. You won't get spat on. So we look at this and I start thinking, what is this thing called social marketing? And a lot of people seem to think social marketing is when you communicate some health education. So if you look at these dimensions, you have education at one end and behavior change on the other. How many of you believe just educating someone will result in behavior change? Right, that was a question. Okay, everybody knows the difference between communication and the marketing mix? Okay, you tell me, what's in the marketing mix that's beyond communication?
4 Ps.
4 Ps. See, you have to talk, I told you. I'm not getting paid either way. You talk, I talk. I'm not getting paid. So you've got these 4 Ps, and so what are the 4 Ps?
Product, place, price, and promotion.
Okay. Do you at PSI feel like you do product, place, price, promotion, right?
Yes.
I mean, you have product branding, you have different price points here for different types of condoms. You have unique and interesting distribution strategies. One of my favorites was female condoms in hairdresser outlets, so you have distribution strategy, and of course you have a whole bunch of promotion strategies that include communication. Now, what else is in this promotion business? You have coupons or sales promotions? Yeah. Do you have, we heard this morning, and of course I've heard before, it could be a slightly more complicated family planning service we provide because it's more expensive and because there may be some additional cost. Post-surgery, for example, we could give a financial incentive or a coupon for discount. So you're doing all of that, and we don't mention personal selling. I mean, all of our volunteers out in the field, right, who are making this pitch for male circumcision, family planning, and other malaria nets, etc., are all using all elements of the marketing mix. Now, I'm embarrassed to tell you, I spend more time on this next thing that happens than the entire deck. Oh, you didn't even, no, do it again, do it again. Oh. This was the part that, I mean, I have to tell you, this was totally new for me. So, it would have been embarrassing with that, introduction, and then it doesn't even work. So here's what I see as the difference between health education and social marketing. I think health educators typically are in a more narrow, much smaller space. And I have nothing against it. I mean, CDC is one of my longest and most enduring and most valuable clients or partnerships. But what it doesn't do, so it's one part, it's only communication and it's only education. It's not 4Ps and it's not behavior change. So that's how I place it. So, I never bothered showing this slide to my students, but I will starting the next social marketing class I'm in, because I think a lot of the times people mistake it too. So a couple more things. It's also philosophically different. So if you click that one, sure. You already got this, but it's in words, right? So you've got, what we're trying to do is use commercial marketing frameworks, like segmentation, targeting, and positioning. I'm going to show you what that is in a minute. And the 4 Ps to enhance individual and collective well-being. There's a word in there that is missing. This is a trick. It's a trick slide. There's a word in there that's missing. So you're going to ask a question or provide the answer.
Well, let me start your question. The promotion can it be part of the communication?
Yes. So I made it I created this thing as an only promotion versus more than promotion. And what was the answer? What's missing? I did it deliberately. What's missing here? Frameworks and techniques to voluntarily change behavior to enhance individual and collective well-being. Right? So this is really important to us, this voluntary part, right? So if you look at a continuum, on one hand, we say you can let people do what is in their best interest. On the other hand, we have laws that say you have to do something, right? Whether they're, anti-smoking, alcohol, we can think about other examples. And we're somewhere in between because we want to set up some incentives and offerings and choice structures so that people voluntarily change their behavior. Does that make sense? So we don't want to leave them up to their own devices with no help, and we don't want to make it, completely illegal for them to engage in that behavior. So we call it this paternalistic, libertarian paternalism. There are lots of words for it, but it's a little bit like saying using choice architecture, using nudging, using the 4 Ps to get us to that space where people voluntarily change their behavior to not only help themselves but also those around them. That's where we are. We're good? So now someone says, what is social marketing? Peter, of course, this is too long, right? We can come up with a shortcut, but it's really, I would say, just using these, you can say 4 Ps, or you can go beyond that to get people to voluntarily change their well-being behavior. Okay, so let's talk about this other part, right? What is the segmentation, targeting, positioning? So you've got the Ps, but you've also got these guys. And let me ask you this for a moment. All of you are working on projects. Are all of your audiences similar to each other in terms of what affects them, what are their barriers to changing their behavior, what they need, what they want? No, right? No. So again, one extreme, you can think everybody's the same. The other extreme, you can think every individual is different, right? A segment of one. Neither is optimal. Right? You've got to, again, be somewhere in the middle where you say things like how many segments are going to result in better return on investment, that are cost efficient, and yet each segment is responsive in terms of the advocated behavior change. So as we're thinking about this, we have very specific criteria for figuring out whether something should be considered a segment. And in marketing, something is considered a segment only when you tailor your offering to them. If you're giving everybody the same thing, you don't have segments. Doesn't matter what you think in your head, but as far as marketing is concerned, as far as a plan is concerned, you are doing different things. So this group is getting something and this group is getting something else. Right? This group gets the coupon, the discounts, this group doesn't. This group accesses the system through social franchising, this group doesn't. So we're doing different things and that's what makes you a segment. But that's not the only reason why you have segments. So let's talk a little bit about that. A segment is costly, right? Because if you're doing different things, it's going to cost more money. So you have certain criteria for when a segment is viable. It's got to be large enough. It's got to be measurable. It's got to be accessible legally and distribution, and from an operations perspective. And it's got to be responsive. So if you don't have all 4 things going on, you're out of luck, because you can't get that return on investment from a separate segment. It's not worth it to spend that money on that separate segment unless all 4 criteria are present, right? So, and I'm going to send more slides, because this is only 1 or 3 decks, so I'm just going to put everything up there. I'm hoping you can keep asking me questions forever. And no, I do. And even if I don't have the information, I'll find it. I'm good at this. So the key here is that for me, I've found these 2 segments that meet all those criteria across a variety of projects. I've been doing this for over 30 years. Across a variety of projects, I've separated and asked just one question, or even just look at body language. I don't even need to ask anything. Is my why should I do a segment, and how should I do a segment? So which one do you think is easier in terms of behavior change? How. Right? Because they've already figured out why. But this is telling you have to answer why before you can talk about how. Right? So this person here has already figured out, yeah, I may be at risk, and I could be vulnerable to certain diseases, or this initiative, this advocated behavior change you're offering, I'm motivated by it, but I don't have the ability to actually implement the change. Okay, so I'm going to stop right now, and I'm going to ask you to think about, raise your hand, think about a situation where you have people like that, but use their language. So I do health and well. I have someone here say, you know what, I know sunscreen is important, but I just forget to use it every day. Right? So this is a different segment from saying, hey, you know what, it competes with other goals. I've got to look attractive. The choice is between living and being attractive. I pick attractive any day. But that's a kind of, a response you're going to get, as in, I want to use it, but I don't know how. Or why should I use it? It gets in the way of other goals. I have to give something else up. If I do it, I could die just crossing the street. You've heard all of these kind of arguments. Now, I want someone from the audience to tell me, on a project they're working on, what a why segment would sound like. I'm assuming you're all working. Is that a bad assumption? It's a bad assumption. Oh no! No! I hope. Oh, thank you.
So I work on meal circumcision programs. So the why would be, why should I cut off my foreskin if I still need to wear a condom when I have sex? So what's the benefit to me? And the how is really, how do I access it? I mean, once you're convinced, that's a really easy thing of saying, go to X, Y, Z.
Exactly. One more.
So I'm working on a project where we're trying to build sanitation on the consumers in East Asia. So a why would be, why should I try to build a market based around rural consumers when I know they're not going to buy my product anyway? A how would be, yes, I recognize there is a consumer base there, but how do I get to them?
Exactly. And I like both examples, because in one case, the why and the how were both what we would call end users. And in the second example, you can see that the why may be related to a middle entity, right? It could be a donor or a different type of government, right? Different type of stakeholder, and the how would be your end user, right? But they may also, the why and the how often have to be incorporated in all your grants, right? You have to do that. You have to say, why is this important? We talk about burden of disease and other things, right? You can even look at it from a corporate perspective. And the how is, what does PSI do in terms of its operations and implementation that gives them a unique advantage, right? So you can see this why, how thing works for doing lots of different types of things, whether you're dealing with end users or consumers or whether you're dealing with middle entities. So now we'll just skip past the first couple of things. We'll just go past this. How? Here we go. What are these people thinking? These whys and how? So typically, what we're finding across a series of studies, across a series of 3 decades, is the whys are typically motivated to say why because they want to preserve their status quo. They don't want to change it. They want to hold on to their behavior. They're desperate to hold on to the behavior. And remember, we're good marketers. So as good marketers, we never show disdain. We never roll up our eyes and go, oh, you're so stupid. You don't do any of that. Because if you want true insights, you have to be totally neutral, right? You have to poker face. You can't make judgments. Remember, open and co-produce. You cannot make any judgments. Open. And you ask people, well, either you or why do people like you want to keep doing what you're doing? And people will say things like, what do you mean? Huh? It's not even crossing their mind, all the way down to, I have this figured out. I'm fine as is. Leave me alone. This works for me. And you just hear it over and over again in so many different ways. It's just like, I want to keep doing what I'm doing, just go. Right? And this is very different. I want to change. I don't know how. I feel bad. It's a habit I can't break. I have no self-control. Yes, I think it's important, but I'm going to procrastinate. I'm going to do it later. But I would say, no, yes, I use the sunscreen, but I get less of something else. Yes, I get the nail circumcision, but I get, less fun. It won't be as exciting. Or no, I won't be able to have sex for, 3-6 weeks? How many weeks? 6. No way. So but what this tells you is that everyone is rational. We just don't understand their utility function. These guys are putting a lot of weight on their current behavior. So you're thinking, I'm offering something, and they're thinking about the benefits of what I'm offering and the cost of what they're doing, right? And they're doing exactly the opposite. They're looking at the benefit of what they're doing and the cost of what you're suggesting. So that just totally flips it, right? And if you keep talking about the benefits of what you're doing, what's going on in their head? What's this going to cost me? What am I going to have to give up, right? So I was on the trip to Niger and Congo a month or so ago, and so some people here in the audience are like, oh my gosh, this is so great. Because the last time I saw them, they were either in Kinshasa or Niamey, so it's really cool. But the key here is when we're over there and we say family plan, right? We say, here are all the benefits of family planning. Go, 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 go. It's fantastic, right? And we're talking about infant mortality and mother's health and all the good health reasons for why you should have few kids. And what are they thinking? Remember, you're promoting the benefits of what you're offering, and what are they thinking? What do I have to give up, right? And one big thing that they would have to give up, and we learned, is status. To have more kids is status producing, right? So in social marketing terms, the only way in which you are going to be persuasive is to give them an alternative means to get back that status. They're not going to give up their status by having fewer kids unless you come up with another way to give them status. Because all they see then is, and by the way, it goes beyond that. It's not just status, there's other benefits that they would lose if they reduce the size of the family. And unless we bring all those back, it says, you're not. So it's this very barrier-based approach. You say, what are you thinking? What gets in your way? What can we do to overcome that in a healthier way? So I'm going to now just show you a couple of things. We've just been talking about philosophy. Enough of this. Enough of this. Okay, I'm leaving this up here. And you can see there are a subset of studies, different things you can do to change the behavior of the why should I do this thing. and different things you can do to change the behavior of how I should do it, say. Yeah? Okay, so I'm going to show you one, and then you tell me other stories. So can you just go to that next one? Okay, here we go. Use social norms. I decided I would show you the Dartmouth one first. And that's where I'm from. And here's a poster using social norms that 76% of Dartmouth students consume 4 or fewer drinks on a Saturday night. Basically saying, if you're consuming more, you're the horse's ass. Right? I mean, now there's a bit of a problem with this image because unfortunately a lot of the segment doesn't care if they're the horse's ass. They can do that. So maybe we should have come up with something better than the horse's ass. But so here's a question for you. Are there situations where someone says, it's not for me? Duh, why, it's not relevant, right? Are there situations where you can actually provide data to them? And you can pick at a community level, at a country level, at a continent level, whatever level you want to pick, that says something about how other people have adopted your advocated behavior. Can we do that? Do we do that? Because we're a company that measures results, right? Why not use that data? A lot of people can't do it because they don't have any information, right? It has to be accurate. You have to have this data. So if we have that data, think about it. Who is in a situation where you have very little penetration or small percentage of the population that is actually engaging in the advocated behavior, but in a neighboring state you have, or country, if it's Africa, it could just be a neighboring country, you have much better performance. So how do you do that? Can you do that? Are there unintended consequences? Can I go to Congo and talk about Rwanda?
Not that particular example.
I know that. That's why I'm pushing it. Okay, can I go to Rwanda? Can I go to Zimbabwe and talk about Rwanda? You can form maybe clusters, or think about, even if you don't talk about the actual percentage of people who are doing this, you can talk about growth rates and how many more people do this every day, right? As a way of making people feel like it's relevant to them. So that's an example of using social norming. By the way, after you see 5, I'm going to ask you which one was your favorite, and I'm going to ask the way you can apply. So just a heads up, there's a quiz. This one is overcoming key barriers for behavior change. I thought we should just do this at PSI. So PSI, you guys have to fill out a health and wellness assessment. This is a biometric screening, right? Are you supposed to do that?
Next slide.
So, most organizations have this, and they have very this is like cause and yeah, we continue these slides. But I always start with my own community. I mean, this is not about you or Africa or India. This is about my community. This was done at Dartmouth. Okay, so I showed you the first slide was at Dartmouth. So is this one. And I always start. It's us. We have challenges changing our own behavior. Let's figure that out, and then we'll worry about everybody else's behavior. Right? So this is the same kind of thing, where what we did is it's overcoming barriers. So we can ask people, why are you not doing this? And it could be simple things like, I can't even register. You know how it asks you for ID? What's ID? How many IDs do you have? I have at least 6. You know, every time I'm online doing something else, they make me change some alphabet, some number, some letter, and of course I can't remember it. And so I have a lot of them. So what it tells you here is solution. Barrier, solution. Barrier, solution. Barrier, solution. You pick up the key ones, and you can see in 1 week, with a small piece of paper, really cost efficient, and you get a large percentage of employees to actually undertake this, and of course you keep increasing that. It's just giving you some examples of what happens when you just tell someone to do the biometric screening, that's the champion letter, versus you give them this sort of thing. That says, I understand your barriers, I respect you, I acknowledge there are not only good things about this behavior change I'm advocating, but there could be some things that get in the way. And immediately people feel like they can relate to you better. And I'm going to show you other examples of that. Use media channels to the point of decision making. These are some of my favorites. Don't you love this? Yeah? You know, this is, instead of this is in a drug, at a pharmacy. Instead of all the legal mumbo jumbo you have, who reads that? I mean, this is one time where I wish the print was even smaller. But instead, we could have stories, and I'm working on, this is one of the projects, there's Linda's story about how, you know, all the reasons for why she stopped taking her prescription drugs and why that was really bad. And so you're acknowledging that. You say, yes, side effects. Yes, you know, I felt loss of control. Yes, 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 yes. I'm acknowledging these are barriers. And a conversation or a way, Linda's telling her story and narrative on how she overcame all those barriers. So those are much more effective. Oh, help me, do one. You can do. Oh, yes, yes, yes. So is there something at the point of decision making? When I'm making decisions, like when we're, let's say they go to the pharmacist, right? At the point of decision making, what can we do to encourage our people, say, to buy more condoms or birth control pills or whatever it is we may be responsible for? Okay, I'll take your question if you respond to my answer tonight.
I'm confused by why this is in the why segment. I would think that point of purchase reminders would be more effective for people who have a small barrier on how.
And it's really interesting. In part, it's because, and really good question, is you see most of the how material is too long for me to put at a point, at the point of purchase. So this is really for people, you know, it's saying this as a reason why, because they will do it impulsively, they will do it spontaneously, they will not do it deliberately, and they will not do it thoughtfully. So I'm finding more and more, if I can tell my why segment, it's sort of like saying, double check, you know, and it's right at the point without any thinking. Because what's happening is, it's not important enough for them to actually retrieve it from memory and make an informed decision. They will only do it impulsively when they do it. So I'm always trying to come up with ways to make them spontaneously do the behavior without any thinking, without any thinking whatsoever. So, you know, we call it hot and cold states. You know, hot states are like when you're right there in front of the poker machine. That's a hot state. Or in the car dealership, that's a hot state. Or in front of the buffet table, that's a hot state. A cold state is when you're further away in time and space, and you have time to think about it, and you're trying to figure out what the trade-offs are, whether it's pros and cons, whether this is good for you. And what we're finding is how people respond only in hot states. Because there's no cold deliberation, why people may actually deliberate. But to your point, and I'm happy to send you guys a chapter that describes some of this stuff, there is a dashed line, so it's not like none of these can work for the Y segment, or that the initiatives for the Y segments can't work for the how segments. It's just, I find that the effect is smaller, much smaller. So, good thinking. So now, can you tell me, if I'm trying to get someone to make a purchase, think of first of where our audiences are making their purchases. Could be gas station, could be pharmacy, could be supermarket, grocery store, maternity. I mean, you know, I'm still in Africa. Nightclub, exactly, kiosk. So what can we do at that point of purchase, right there, right, to motivate them to actually take on our products? And that's something to think about, because most people seem to think that people have strong preferences and then they come in and they choose what they want. We know that most preferences are constructed on the spot. Like I said earlier, it's impulsive. Nobody's thinking about it. Nobody's deliberating. They're just doing, you know, on the spot kind of impulsive things. And so something to consider now is maybe using those little decals or stickies or something that say, you know, now, take me now. And you know, marketers spend a lot of time and money in retail outlets to, you know, end of aisle kind of displays and all this stuff just to, because they know that's what happens. That people will not think about it. So we're coming to, another health and wellness assessment. Get commitments and pledges. Most people just ask you to opt in. This is choice architecture, right? They say, please take the health and wellness assessment. I don't do that. So what I do instead is one of these. I prefer to take advantage of this free tool to maintain or improve my health and save $200. I prefer not to take advantage and decline this opportunity to get help in maintaining or improving my health and well-being. And the lawyers refuse to let me say, and I don't care about $200. And $200 means nothing to me. So I was so excited about that. I thought, oh, let me do that, let me do it. I can tell you today, nothing meaningful in my life gets done without a lawyer and a tech person. Because I'm always pushing the bounds with technology, and then the lawyers are ordering me for doing that. So let's go to the next slide, and I can tell you a quick story. Again, this was at the Dartmouth Medical Center. I have examples from other settings as well. But I've learned the Eddie Murphy way, that if you can say you need improving and you show your own improvement individually and the organization you belong to, then people feel like, okay, this is not just, I'm not saying I'm perfect and this is a remedial lesson for you. We're totally all in the same boat. Look at 2010, from Jan to September, they had no incentive. 10% of all HR's best friends completed the health and wellness. Then the board, this is the Dartmouth Medical Center Hospital Board, throws in the $200 copay deductible and an additional 27%. So now we have a total of 37% complete a health and wellness assessment. And they were shocked. There's a bunch of economists. They're like, oh, we get money. How can they not do it? How can they leave money on the table? Most people are like, I don't even know what a copay deductible is. I don't know how close I am, how far I am. What's this 200? And remember, these are all nurses and physicians. So then you've got this last part. So I said, okay, on November 1st, and you saw the website, right? So if you go back one, November 1st, give me one page on your website, and I stick this in. That's all I did. Everything else was the same. This came before this, all the actual offering was not different. There's no additional money, nothing. And you saw already that I got an additional 30%? How many? To say yes after saying no twice before, all year round. So what happened? They had to pick one. It was a commitment and a pledge. And it was anonymous. Nobody came after them and said, oh, yo. And when I say 30%, this is just in 5 weeks, and they actually completed it. So these are, 42% pledged, and I stopped counting after 5 weeks because I'm kind of a data grubber, and I figured, okay, it's significant. I'm going to quit. You guys can keep getting more. But the key thing was to get that commitment and pledge. Let me mention a couple of things about this that I think is very interesting. Back one again. I've been working on fear appeals, or communication that uses fear arousal for decades. And the format is as follows, right? I'm going to tell you all the serious consequences of non-adherence, right? And then I'm going to give you a solution, right? Use the and the basic idea is that fear will be aroused by the earlier part of the communication, and any information or suggestion that reduces an aversive state like fear will be reinforced, right? Will be considered as positive. So you tell me all this horrible stuff is going to happen, but if I use a female condom, I'm going to be fine, then it's okay, it's good, right? Over time, we're seeing over and over again, and I was at over the social marketing group yesterday before I came to the board meeting. We all say over and over again, fear without self-efficacy does not work. It does not work. All people do is start managing their fear, often by getting another cigarette. That was always fun for me. You're running these focus groups and you're getting feedback on fear appeals for anti-smoking campaigns, and they're going out and smoking more. And the other part has to really do with focusing on self-efficacy. So one of the things we found with this format, I use this format a lot, is in a traditional health communication, either fear is aroused without an increase in self-efficacy. And often people don't see the I in the appeal. They think it's for somebody else. There's no I. It's not relevant to them. It says it's mass communication, so it's mass. It's not me. Look what I do. I. So that's the second thing to focus on. The third thing is I'm giving them, and I test these, as I said, I'm happy to share any amount of papers with you. They read the fear, they read the health stuff, and then they think they're not supposed to use it to make a decision. This was shocking to me, because I spent more than 2 decades designing health appeals, right? And they're saying, but what does it have to do with me? And what does it have to do with my decision? So I am now taking the key costs and benefits of the options and putting them in this choice architecture. So, I can give you another example. I will, flu shot reminders, just as an example. Say you have 4 choice architectures. Click here if you want the flu shot. Reminder, right? Opt in, opt out. If you don't click here, we're sending you a flu shot reminder. You have to opt out. It's automatic enrollment, right? Or look at mine. Click here, and basically it says, I want to remind myself to get a flu shot versus I want you to remind me to get a flu shot. Now, what do you think is going to work the best? So I get 90% plus people saying, send me the reminder.
What about, though, the issue of activate, and where you just can't arouse fear anymore because it's just...
They've inoculated. They've had it.
But I think of the example of a recent article I read on men who have sex with men, in Washington, D.C., and many of the younger generation just aren't scared of AIDS anymore. It's something to be managed. So trying to arouse that fear in them. I think back to like the posters that I used to see in my school with the Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
You're standing out. Yeah, that did a lot to arouse fear. But just to hear your feedback, what do you do if you just can't arouse that fear anymore? Then
yeah. And I don't. So I don't even bother. If I can't arouse it, I'm okay with it because it was not my intent in the first place. The goal was not to arouse fear. The goal was to help your audience undertake prevention, promotion, detection, treatment behaviors. That's what you're trying to do, right? And the question is, are there other levers to help you get there that are not fear-related? Right? I mean, trying to tell someone, even if it's cold and you say, here are some statistics, you might think HIV/AIDS is dead, and we don't have to worry about it. I know that's a bad statement. But the idea being that now nobody really dies of this, it's fine. And the question is, what would motivate them then? Is it, if it's not fear of death, what is it that you would tell them? So you can either say cold facts as to how many new cases of HIV/AIDS are still found every day, non-death related facts, dying is actually, especially for young kids, is a very cool thing. It's not scary at all. How many of you have teenagers? Close your ears right now. Because they fantasize about death much more than we would ever want to be. So death is, but it's the stuff in between. And, the tobacco guys are figuring this out now. The anti-smoking, campaigns are figuring out. You're dying, nothing happens to you, you're done. But it's the stuff before, right? When you can't speak and all of that stuff is what gets you. So it's not, you have diabetes, you don't manage your debt. It's more you have diabetes, we're going to have to cut off your foot. Oh, now that's really nasty. Death, but that foot, nasty. Or not being able to tie your shoelaces, even nastier than bad foot or no foot and death. Not being able to drive your car, right? Or other consequences of blindness, right? Much more compelling than saying you're going to be blind or you don't know what your A1C is or you don't understand what this is doing to your kidneys and again, we're finding more and more evidence for it. So I spent a little extra time on this too because I think it's a really positive, very important tool. And the last one, have a little fun. Who wants to? Doom and gloom is not a persuasive approach me strategy. It really isn't. It's just not very cool. I have all kinds of stuff here on flu shots. It's just so much fun. So, you like the chattering sound that your teeth make when I have a high fever and just... So where do we get this? It's the same kind of idea. These are people, we go to the how or the whys, and they're not getting a flu shot. Remember, again, this is not the medical center, okay? So these are like 5,000 plus nurses and doctors because that. And, they just don't get, we say, why aren't you getting it? I'm fine as is. I'm okay. If I get the flu, I'm a professional, I know what to do. Get out of my face, right? Why bother? And we actually asked this group, why don't people get a flu shot? They co-produced, they came up with all these funny things. My favorite personally was, I figured if I hold out long enough, someone will eventually offer me some money to meet a quota. I think these are really good ones and very true. If everyone else gets his overall flu shot, I certainly don't need to worry about it. It's perfectly true. from 53%. I don't know if this is on the slide. If you click again, oh, here we go.
I just want to say that a good family friend of ours who happens to be Canadian has a great saying, which is, if you're laughing, you're learning, because some process of you does get engaged, you know, and you do have to, you have to get people, get people's attention emotionally. It doesn't have to be through fear. I think this is really a great way to do it.
Thank you. And, I also know, just to support what you said, that when people are stressed out, they don't learn. I've been teaching for all these years, and if you have that kind of environment or culture or, feeling in the class, it's just counterproductive. So this was really good because, all the people who said that they responded favorably to the response efficacy of a flu shot had already gotten a flu shot. These were people going, not for me. They'd say things like, I'm not part of the set. I got a flu shot last year, I still got the flu. Or I didn't get a flu shot last year and I didn't get the flu. All that usual status quo. It was really effective. So what I want to do now, and we can click again, see, those are the first 5, just as an example. So think about, can you use this? And I can jumpstart you. I think about this all the time when I'm listening to different challenges that PSI faces, internally and externally. Even though Peter doesn't like the biometric screening and the health and wellness assessment, I don't know if somebody's going to go and tell Carl about this, or the head of HR, things might change and you might be the target. Okay, so talk to me. Anybody like any of these or can think about ways to use them?
So I saw the soon-to-be-released company 158 Lighthouse 158 new condom commercial, and so eventually we'll be on social text. It's pretty funny, but it does have a little fun, and it's very, very playful in the way that a lot of Southern Africa condom ads are famous for that. Right?
I've seen the one with the banana, and absolutely, I like that a lot. But just again, thinking about the fact that most of this audience, when they see something fearful, the Y audience, what we call it seizing and freezing. They look at the information in a very shallow way and freeze and say, not for me, and just detach. And so if you want to come up with a different or a more unique way, sometimes actually poking fun of the initiative or the health behavior can actually be more productive than using those traditional methods. You like the horses ads, yeah. Oh, then.
That a lot of the is the internal pressure. So you're providing knowledge around the fact that probably aren't having sex if they are.
Would be great. That's a really nice example. Very nice example. Anybody else?
I think of the humor one. I saw a Dutch commercial. I think it was a Trojan condom about a guy who was in the grocery store and he's got his kid just having an absolute meltdown. It was 1 minute and 30 seconds of an absolute meltdown.
Yes.
And I remember seeing that as a teenager thinking, that actually could be me. Shaved in there. But it made me laugh.
And it stuck with you.
It stuck with me. And so I was, as we're speaking to adolescents and young people, about, hey, one of the outcomes of unprotected sex is a child, and this is how a child behaves in a grocery store when they want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you even, could we throw this, and I know you have to be culturally sensitive, so it has to be modified for the culture and co-produced with the culture you're operating in. So a couple of things. Could you even say, when people come in for family planning, right, as an example, could you use some variant of choice architecture to say, I want to go ahead and pursue this because of these benefits. And the benefits don't have to be health benefits. One of the things we learned in a focus group in Niger was we asked the mothers, what would be one advantage of not having so many kids, right? And we're thinking about all our, we have our biases and assumptions we're making ahead of time. And the one that everybody agreed with in the focus group, I'm sorry. Yeah, they said, I'm so tired. He just said, I'm just so tired all the time. And so there you go, I want to consider this family planning, or I want to learn more about family planning or consider these family planning options so I have more time to rest. So we typically pick the things they care about, not what we care about. That's why it's co-produced, right? Or you can even say, I don't want to, use any family planning, even if it means I'm going to be more tired than I am now. And they were really pretty much up there. If you had 7.6 kids, you would feel the same way. Okay, yes.
I'm thinking about the media at point of decision-making
Yes.
one, and one thing that comes to mind for me, and I guess this could work for the why and the how,
Yes.
I can think that some of the whys in terms of preserving their status quo, one of the things in a conservative country like Niger, for example, for a woman to go to a pharmacy and buy a condom, it's not happening really. But if you put that in a salon or somewhere where she goes, this may not impact her losing her status quo of being respectable or whatsoever. So, and the how also if you don't know where to get it.
Absolutely. And, we've shown that it's effective in other African countries. I just mentioned the female condom, distributed through the hairdressers. This is something we should definitely consider in Niger as well.
Just to share, I'm working on a couple different things with Vietnam, and they were explaining to me that they created a one-on-one prototype, and now because they haven't perfected, but it's a hotel keychain with condom inserts inside. And I thought, great idea, very, very smart.
Here's another one which I just heard about. Coca-Cola can distribute everywhere in the world, correct?
Yeah.
Pretty much. And, again, we're thinking about Niger and how some of the rural areas would be difficult to access because of lack of infrastructure, including roads, etc., to get there. But we know somehow the Coke truck is going to get there. So how about we package things in such a way that they fit in between the empty spaces of the Coca-Cola bottles in a crate, right? I mean, it just makes so much sense, and it's back to the same thing, which is, taking advantage and partnering with another entity that has the same goals of reaching to the same audience, but, you don't compete with directly and you'd be happy with it.
I remember reading about studies which looked at if you got your target audience to simply sign a pledge saying, I will practice the desired behavior, that if you compare that to a group where they didn't sign the pledge, it's a significant difference in behavior.
Isn't that amazing?
Just simply signing a pledge.
That's right. That's exactly the getting commitments. Absolutely. And sometimes it's even a private pledge, but they're just doing it. Because part of it is just taking the action, because most people think doing nothing is costless. And we know this is untrue, right? But they think if they don't do anything or don't make a decision, don't take action, they didn't lose anything. And what the pledges do is they actually get to take action, and we have lots of data show that when you do that, you are more committed to it. And I think it's fascinating. We also, just one more thing, with the public pledges, you can then evoke an additional strategy we use all the time, which is hypocrisy. So for example, you say, you insist your kids drink pure water or clean water to you. That's hypocrisy, right? You're being a hypocrite. But it's that you've not taken that pledge where you're telling your kids to do it. Or in this country, we often even use, say, you're the pharmacy advisor for your parents. You know how we're like sandwich, some of us. But you could be the pharmacy advisor for your parents. Who is your pharmacy advisor? And we do this because we know they're off schedule on their prescription. So that same kind of thing, that once you do this, you have a lot of good ways of getting people to think about their behavior and hopefully to change it.
We had a good example of that a few years ago in Uganda, where there was a behavior change campaign about sugar daddies, and it was a very middle-aged man, and the message was, do you want this man to sleep with your daughter? Then why are you sleeping with his?
Yeah, a little bit. And actually, I think that's a good example. Could you speak a little bit about one-time behavior change and sustained behavior?
Yeah.
Because in that example, Uganda, that was an HIV prevention campaign. HIV incidence is going up. Sustained behavior, and that campaign wasn't just, the only action. behavior is not.
It's much more different.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm thinking about some of these examples. These are.
You could do for like malaria nets or one time frame. But these kinds of things you can do more. We keep, we have this, like if you look at Prochaska's decision-making stage model, right, from pre-contemplation, contemplation, action, maintenance, relapse, etc. There are different barriers in each stage. And so that's the other way of sustaining it. You get the pre-contemplators to go to contemplation, and that's one set of barriers. From contemplation to preparation is another set of barriers. From preparation, etc. So you've got to keep it fresh, keep it easy, but for behavior that is not a one-shot behavior, you definitely have to do some sustained communication because people will forget. But what I love about status quo bias is that once you get people to switch, then that becomes a status quo and they're less biased about switching out of it too. So I'm going to show you I have some disenrollment data as well. People enroll in things. Like some of these things like, this is not just this. We follow these guys. So they now have access to health coaching. We're looking at how many people take advantage of that, how many people take advantage of the online resources for their diets, for example. So we have tracked subsequent ongoing behavior as well, and it's very, very positive. So that's exciting. I know we just have 5 minutes, so I'm just going to show you a couple of snippets. Now, what's up? I like this. So these are people. This is for people who have already shown interest or who have actually taken advantage of your services. So how many of us target specifically the people who had used some form of birth control in the past and have now? Because those are the people, that's low-hanging fruit as far as I'm concerned. These were people that had already donated blood before. And the postcards just went to those people who had donated blood before. No surprise, the return on investment is huge, huge. The odds were like 8 to 1. So, sometimes we forget that there are people out there that have, that are close, have come to us, have actually used our services, but then we just treat them like everybody else. And I think we're wasting our resources if we do that. So that's just an example. Okay, so do one thing at a time. Don't tell them to do 200 things. Oh, I like these. So this is where your goals are stuck exactly in the same spot. So this is saying things like, walking for an hour every week, and then where you keep on upping the exercise, eating less, and then making sure that you drink a lot of water, just improving it slowly. But I like the way that it's very specific to a goal. Now the reason I bring it up. Most of us have no health goals. We don't. We have goals that we want to be happy. We want our work to be exciting. But those kind of goals do not prompt implementation plans. So when it's linked to a very specific goal, I like that. Because then you've given this person a goal. Because most people don't care about retrieving and forming their own goals. They have no goals. This is a real challenge, and especially when something is a habit. Habits are the biggest disruptor of goal formation. Because you're just doing. You're not saying, is this right for me? Is this wrong for me? Should I change my behavior? Should I have a new goal plan? How much weight? It's shocking. You ask people, how much weight do you want to lose? And typically the average is 20 pounds. And it's across the board. It doesn't matter whether you're a size 2 or a size 20. It's 20 pounds. And it's fascinating. And then you say, how long have you had this goal? And it's always for a long time. So it's the total BS goal. It's not a goal. A goal without an implementation plan is a fantasy. It's not a goal. So that's one of the things about specific goals. And then, here, some more, okay? Using imagery. Here's another way of getting you to complete your health and wellness assessment. It's these are just screenshots. And it circles you, don't have your ID, and it tells you what to do. Use your social security number instead. And it'll tell you here, this is your social security number. Each screen that you're going to see yourself, and it tells you what to take and how to take it. Just leave the person. And I love the imagery part because a lot of our audiences don't respond to words, and not a lot of words. So if we could I love the way PSI does this with the water purification project, where, you just visually show what you're supposed to do. right? And how long it's going to take or what it's going to look like. And you can look at these crazy numbers. 2 weeks. And all we did was they asked people to sign in, read it, sent 4 reminders, 4 letters, and they had 30%. And all I did was send this one silly little piece of paper. 2 weeks. So it can be very cost efficient. So prompts for sustainability is one of my favorite things here, which is when you're actually going to do it. If we could actually put our family planning reminders right there in the bedroom. So this is for SIDS, and this stuff is actually on the diaper itself. Right? Isn't that perfect? That's what we want. So now you have to think creatively about how you do this with family planning. And, you know, I make sure to read all of them, and they'll be anonymous. Okay, so let's do that. So, thoughts. I know you got 2-3 minutes, but give me any thoughts. Can we think about things that we can do to help people? Let's just take any one of them. This I think you got straightforward.
I have a very good relevant thing for us to intro.
Okay, good.
We are marketers. And we are awful at the damn dishwashers. And we don't apply any motivations or marketing techniques to the dishwasher schedule, and it's passive-aggressive notes on the dishwasher and the black tub. And for 4 years, I have seen this. And it's ridiculous. And I think we could probably brainstorm a better solution.
You give me a cookie every time.
I'll take the $200.
But it's an example of a sustained, simple, accessible behavior change, but for some reason it's a barrier to 95% of us.
No, see, but now you're being like a health educator. You're saying it's easy, it's this, it's that, but really that's not what other people are thinking, right? They're thinking this is inconsequential, I have more important things to do, it doesn't matter whether one
Somebody
comes in
else
or
will
one
do it.
isn't, somebody else will do it, right? So you have to come up with the top 10 reasons in a very humorous way for why people are not using the dishwasher.
And if their reasons aren't logical, if their reasons are reminders, or they forgot, they didn't know that they're not in town, deal with those. Don't tell them a message.
What you do is you make up some statistics. You put a poster right next to the sink, and you say, 96% of all PSI employees wash their own dishes. Now that's bullshit. It should be something that would introduce a social norm.
No, but and again, it's supposed to be truthful. That number is supposed to be but what you could get a pledge of commitment. You could say, I pledge to wash my own dishes, right, after I use them, because I don't want someone else to have to clean up for me, or I refuse to wash my own dishes after I use them, even if it means that someone else, right, has to clean them for me. And that's really the question is, it's either that or what do they think is happening? And if you might even show the person. You might say, this is the person who had to do the dishes this week. So it becomes a personal thing. It's not just a right? It's a person. So you could say, Jennifer spent 20 minutes this week washing all the dishes, right? Is she less important than you? So you can get these basic principles of fairness. That is what I'm calling on. And if you have me come back again, we'll totally there's a whole backup couple of slides there, or slide decks there. But we have all these great principles of reciprocity. We did this for you, now you do this for us. Of scarcity, it's only available for a little time. One of the papers, my favorite papers, is not now, it's too easy. We make things, and I wrote this paper, it's so accessible. We make things so accessible that there's no pressure for people to take advantage of it. Right? It's like, why bother? I can do it any time. So, there's that, the scarcity aspect, the responsiveness, the scarcity, the equity or the fairness. There's also what I call credibility or two-sided messages or relate to me. A lot of this stuff, that looks at, not in this, the previous set of 5, looks at pluses and minuses or barriers is considered a two-sided and a much more credible message. We get much better ratings on credibility than if we're just pushing benefits. Much higher ratings. And, all these things come together to create a more persuasive marketing campaign. So I'm going to stop because I know you guys are polite, and even though you're supposed to rush back to washing the dishes. But I hope I have another chance to come chat with you. You know where to find me on the website, your website, and our emails are there. And I would love that. I would absolutely love that because if there are things we're thinking about or I didn't address, then I'd be happy to continue the conversation.